The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, civilizations, and secrets. Among these secrets was one that had been buried for centuries, a relic of a bygone era, a warship of unimaginable power. It was called the Eclipse, a dreadnought from a time when humanity was still young among the stars. Forgotten by history, it drifted silently in the void, waiting for the moment it would be called upon once more. The story begins on a small mining colony at the edge of known space. A young engineer named Tom was working on a routine survey mission. His job was simple: scan asteroids for valuable minerals. But on this day, his sensors picked up something unusual, a massive metallic object, far larger than any asteroid. Intrigued, Tom adjusted his scanners and realized it was no natural formation. It was a ship. Tom's heart raced as he relayed the discovery to his team. The colony's leaders were skeptical at first, but the data was undeniable. A salvage crew was dispatched, and Tom joined them, eager to see the mysterious vessel up close. As they approached, the sheer size of the ship became apparent. It was a monstrous thing, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. The design was ancient, yet advanced in ways that defied understanding. The name Eclipse was etched into its hull, barely visible beneath layers of cosmic dust. The crew docked with the Dreadnought and stepped inside. The interior was dark and silent, the air thick with the weight of centuries. Tom's flashlight flickered as he explored the corridors, revealing glimpses of the ship's past, faded insignias, rusted control panels, and the occasional skeleton of a long-dead crew member. In the heart of the ship, they found the bridge. The control systems were dormant, but Tom noticed something strange. A single console was still active, its screen glowing faintly. As he approached, the screen flickered to life, displaying a message in an archaic form of English, awaiting command authorization. Reactivation sequence ready. Tom hesitated. He knew activating the ship could be dangerous, but the opportunity was too great to ignore. With a deep breath, he entered the command code. The Eclipse shuddered as its systems came online. Lights flickered throughout the ship, and the hum of power filled the air. Tom and the salvage crew watched in awe as the Dreadnought awakened from its long slumber. But their celebration was short-lived. Unbeknownst to them, the activation of the Eclipse had sent a signal across the galaxy, a signal that was picked up by forces far more dangerous than they could imagine. The Eclipse was alive. Its ancient systems hummed with a low, resonant power that seemed to vibrate through the bones of everyone aboard. Tom stood on the bridge, staring at the glowing console, his mind racing. What had he just awakened? The salvage crew around him exchanged uneasy glances, their tools clutched tightly as if they could protect them from whatever lay ahead. "This isn't just some old warship," one of the crew members muttered, his voice trembling. "This thing, it's something else." Tom didn't respond. He was too busy studying the console. The screen now displayed a star map, highlighting a distant system. A single word flashed beneath it: objective. Before anyone could react, the ship's engines roared to life. The Eclipse began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The crew stumbled as the floor beneath them shifted. "We're not in control anymore," someone shouted. Tom gripped the console, trying to input commands, but the system ignored him. The Eclipse had a mind of its own, and it was heading toward the coordinates on the star map. Outside, the mining colony grew smaller as the Dreadnought accelerated. The crew watched in stunned silence as the ship entered hyperspace, the stars blurring into streaks of light. They were now passengers on a vessel with a mission none of them understood. Hours passed, and the tension aboard the Eclipse grew. The crew tried to access the ship's systems, but they were locked out. Tom, however, noticed something strange. The console he had activated seemed to respond to his presence. When he touched it, the screen displayed new information: technical schematics, weapon systems, and something labeled Project Omega. "What's Project Omega?" Tom wondered aloud. Before he could investigate further, the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The crew rushed to the viewports, their breath catching as they saw what lay ahead. A massive space station loomed in the distance, its surface covered in strange, organic-looking structures. It was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The station emitted a faint, pulsating glow, and surrounding it were dozens of smaller ships, sleek, alien vessels with jagged designs. "That's not human," one of the crew members whispered. The Eclipse's weapon systems activated automatically, targeting the alien ships. The crew barely had time to brace themselves before the Dreadnought opened fire. Bright beams of energy lanced out, striking the enemy vessels with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions lit up the void as the alien ships were torn apart. But the victory was short-lived. The space station began to move, its organic structures shifting and writhing as if alive. A massive energy beam shot out, striking the Eclipse's shields. The ship shuddered violently, and warning alarms blared across the bridge. Tom realized the truth: the Eclipse hadn't been forgotten. It had been hidden, for a reason. And now, it was facing an enemy that had been waiting for its return. The Eclipse's shields held, but barely. The alien space station's energy beam had struck with terrifying force, and the Dreadnought systems were struggling to compensate. Tom and the salvage crew clung to whatever they could as the ship rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, and the air was thick with tension. "We need to get out of here," one of the crew members shouted, his voice barely audible over the alarms. Tom didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the console, which now displayed a new message: engaging countermeasures. Before anyone could react, the Eclipse launched a swarm of drones from its hull. The small, agile machines darted toward the alien station, weaving through the remaining enemy ships. When they reached their target, they detonated in a series of blinding explosions, tearing chunks out of the station's organic structures. The alien vessels retaliated, swarming the Eclipse with relentless attacks. The Dreadnought's weapons fired continuously, its targeting systems impossibly precise. But the sheer number of enemy ships was overwhelming. Tom realized they couldn't win this fight alone. He turned to the crew, his voice urgent. "We need to figure out how to control this ship. If we don't, we're dead." The crew scrambled to obey, splitting up to explore the bridge and its systems. One of them, a woman named Lisa, found a terminal that seemed to respond to her commands. "Over here," she called. "I think I can access the ship's logs." Tom rushed to her side as the screen lit up, displaying fragmented entries from centuries ago. The log spoke of a war humanity had fought against an alien race known as the Virak. The Eclipse had been humanity's last hope, a weapon designed to turn the tide. But something had gone wrong. The ship had been abandoned, its mission unfinished. "Project Omega," Tom muttered, remembering the term from earlier. "What is it?" Before Lisa could answer, the ship shuddered again. Another energy beam from the station struck the Eclipse, this time breaching its shields. The bridge lights flickered, and the air grew colder. "We're losing power," someone shouted. Tom's mind raced. He turned back to the console he had activated earlier and placed his hand on it. The screen lit up, displaying a single word: authorization required. Authorization for what? Tom demanded, frustration boiling over. The console didn't respond. Instead, a holographic image appeared above it, a human figure in a military uniform. The figure spoke, its voice calm but commanding. "This is Captain James Reed of the Eclipse. If you are hearing this, then the ship has been reactivated, and the Virak have returned. Project Omega is the key to defeating them. But be warned, it comes at a cost." The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving Tom and the crew in stunned silence. Outside, the alien ships closed in, their weapons charging for another attack. Tom knew they had no choice. They had to unlock Project Omega, whatever it was. The bridge of the Eclipse was in chaos. The alien ships pressed their attack, their weapons battering the Dreadnought's weakened shields. The crew scrambled to maintain control, but the ship's systems were failing. Tom stood at the console, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of Captain Reed's message. "Project Omega is the key," Tom muttered, repeating the hologram's words. "But what does that mean?" Lisa, still at the terminal, called out, "I think I found something. There's a file here labeled Omega Protocol. It's encrypted, but," she trailed off, her fingers flying over the keys. "I think I can bypass it." "Do it!" Tom shouted, his voice barely audible over the alarms. The ship shuddered again as another blast struck its hull. A warning flashed on the main screen, "Hull integrity compromised. Critical damage imminent." Tom clenched his fists. They were running out of time. Lisa's terminal beeped, and the screen lit up with a flood of data. "I've got it," she exclaimed. "The Omega Protocol, it's a weapon. But not just any weapon. It's designed to target the Viric central hive mind. If we can activate it, we might be able to stop them." "Might?" one of the crew members asked nervously. "It's our only chance," Tom said firmly. "How do we activate it?" Lisa scanned the data. "It says here we need to reach the core of the ship. There's a control room deep inside." "But," she hesitated. "It also says the core is unstable. Activating the weapon could destroy the Eclipse." The crew fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Outside, the alien ships continued their relentless assault. Tom took a deep breath. "We don't have a choice. If we don't stop them here, they'll destroy everything. We have to try." The crew nodded, their fear replaced by determination. Together, they left the bridge and made their way deeper into the ship. The corridors were dark and filled with the groans of straining metal. The Eclipse was dying, but it still had one last fight left in it. As they approached the core, the air grew hotter, and the walls pulsed with a faint, eerie light. The control room was sealed, but the console beside the door responded to Tom's touch. The door slid open, revealing a massive chamber filled with glowing machinery. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it rested a single control panel. Above it, a holographic display showed a countdown, "Omega Protocol, ready for activation." Tom stepped forward, his heart pounding. He placed his hand on the panel, and the room filled with a low hum. The display changed, showing a map of the galaxy with a single target highlighted, the Viric hive mind. "This is it," Tom said, his voice steady. "Once I activate this, there's no turning back." The crew exchanged solemn looks. They knew what this meant. Tom took a deep breath and pressed the button. The Eclipse shuddered violently as the Omega Protocol activated. The core began to glow brighter, and the ship's systems started to fail. Outside, the alien ships hesitated, as if sensing the danger. The countdown began. The Eclipse's core glowed brighter with each passing second, its energy building to a crescendo. The ship trembled violently, its ancient frame groaning under the strain. Tom and the crew stood in the control room, their eyes fixed on the holographic countdown, "Omega Protocol, activation in progress." 10. 9. 8. Outside, the alien ships seemed to sense the impending danger. They broke off their attack, retreating from the Dreadnought as if trying to escape. But it was too late. The Eclipse had locked onto their hive mind, and the Omega Protocol was unstoppable. "We need to get out of here," Lisa shouted over the deafening hum of the core. Tom shook his head. "There's no time. The ship's systems are failing. We'd never make it to the escape pods." The crew exchanged grim looks. They had known the risks, but the reality of their situation was sinking in. The Eclipse was going to destroy itself, and take them with it. The countdown continued. 7, 6, 5. Tom turned to the crew, his voice steady despite the chaos. We did what we had to do. If this stops the Virak, it's worth it. The others nodded, their fear replaced by a quiet resolve. They had come this far together, and they would face the end the same way. The core's glow became blinding, and the ship's tremors grew more violent. The countdown reached its final moments. 4, 3, 2. Suddenly, the holographic display flickered. A new message appeared: emergency override detected. Stand by. Tom's eyes widened. What's happening? Before anyone could answer, the ship's AI voice echoed through the chamber. Emergency override initiated. Omega protocol suspended. Core stabilization in progress. The tremors began to subside, and the core's glow dimmed slightly. The crew stared in stunned silence as the countdown disappeared, replaced by a new message: override command received from external source. Awaiting further instructions. External source? Lisa repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. Who could? Her words were cut off as the ship's comm system crackled to life. A voice, calm and authoritative, filled the room. This is Captain Elena Drake of the United Stellar Fleet vessel Dauntless. We've received your signal and are moving to assist. Hold your position. Tom and the crew exchanged looks of shock and relief. The Dauntless, a modern warship, had arrived just in time. Outside, the Dauntless emerged from hyperspace, its sleek hull bristling with weapons. It opened fire on the retreating alien ships, driving them back with precise, devastating strikes. The Virak forces, now disorganized and leaderless, began to scatter. On the Eclipse, the core stabilized, and the ship's systems slowly came back online. The crew let out a collective breath, their relief palpable. Tom activated the comm system. This is Tom, aboard the Eclipse. We're alive, but we need help. The ship's barely holding together. Captain Drake's voice responded immediately. Understood. We're sending a shuttle to evacuate your crew. And Tom, you've done something incredible here. The Eclipse might just have saved us all. As the shuttle approached, Tom took one last look at the control room. The Eclipse had been forgotten for centuries, but now it had fulfilled its purpose. It had altered the fate of the galaxy. But as the crew prepared to leave, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that their journey wasn't over. The Virak had been driven back, but they weren't defeated. And the Eclipse still had secrets to reveal. The shuttle from the Dauntless docked with the Eclipse, and Tom and his crew were quickly evacuated. As they stepped aboard the modern warship, they were greeted by Captain Elena Drake, a tall, sharp-eyed woman with an air of authority. She shook Tom's hand firmly, her expression a mix of admiration and urgency. You've done the impossible, she said. The Eclipse was a legend, a ghost story. And now, thanks to you, it's real. Tom nodded, still processing everything that had happened. We didn't do it alone. The ship, it has a mind of its own. It knew what to do. Captain Drake's eyes narrowed. That's what concerns me. The Eclipse is centuries old, yet its technology is beyond anything we have today. How is that possible? Before Tom could answer, a crew member from the Dauntless approached, holding a data pad. Captain, we've completed a preliminary scan of the Eclipse. There's something you need to see. Drake took the data pad and studied it, her expression growing more serious by the second. She handed it to Tom. Look at this. The screen displayed a detailed schematic of the Eclipse, highlighting its core. Embedded within it was a structure that didn't match the rest of the ship's design, a sleek, alien device pulsing with energy. What is that? Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We don't know, Drake replied. But it's not human. And it's connected to the ship's systems. That's why the Eclipse is so advanced. It's not just a warship, it's a hybrid. Human and something else. The revelation sent a chill through Tom. He thought back to the logs they had found, the mention of Project Omega, and the warning about its cost. Had humanity made a deal with an alien race to build the Eclipse? And if so, at what price? Captain Drake interrupted his thoughts. We need to figure out what that device is and how it works. If the Virak were afraid of the Eclipse, it's because they knew what it could do. And we need to know too. Tom agreed. We should go back to the ship. There might be more answers in its systems. Drake hesitated. The Eclipse is unstable. Its core could fail at any moment. But, you're right. We don't have a choice. Together, Tom, Drake, and a small team returned to the Eclipse. The ship was eerily quiet, its systems barely functioning. They made their way to the core, where the alien device pulsed faintly. As they approached, the device suddenly activated, projecting a holographic image, a star map, similar to the one Tom had seen earlier. But this time, it showed a single planet, highlighted in red. That's not in our database, Drake said, studying the map. It's not even in known space. Before anyone could react, the ship's AI voice echoed through the chamber. Warning, core destabilization imminent. Evacuate immediately. The device's glow intensified, and the core began to shake. Tom realized the truth, the device wasn't just powering the Eclipse. It was a beacon, and it had just sent a signal to the planet on the map. We need to leave. Drake shouted, grabbing Tom's arm. As they fled the ship, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that they had awakened something far greater than the Eclipse. The galaxy's fate was still hanging in the balance, and the real battle was just beginning. The Eclipse's core erupted in a blinding flash of light as Tom, Captain Drake, and the team barely made it back to the Dauntless. The ancient Dreadnought shuddered violently, its hull cracking under the strain. For a moment, it seemed as though the ship would tear itself apart. But then, with a final, deafening groan, the Eclipse stabilized, its core now glowing with a steady, ominous light. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Tom and Drake watched in silence as the alien device within the Eclipse's core transmitted its signal into the void. The star map it had displayed, the one showing the unknown planet, was now the focus of every sensor and scanner aboard the Dauntless. We need to find that planet, Drake said, her voice firm. Whatever that device is calling to, it's bigger than the Virak. And if it's a threat, we need to be ready. Tom nodded, his mind racing. The Eclipse had been a weapon, but it had also been a warning. Humanity had built it with alien technology, and now that technology was reaching out to its creators. As the Dauntless prepared to follow the signal, the Eclipse's AI voice echoed through the comm system one last time. Mission complete. The galaxy's fate is in your hands. The Dreadnought's core flared brightly, and then, with a final burst of energy, it went dark. The Eclipse was silent once more, its purpose fulfilled. Tom stared at the ship, a mix of awe and sadness in his heart. It had been forgotten for centuries, but now it would be remembered as the vessel that changed everything. As the Dauntless entered hyperspace, Tom turned to Drake. What do you think we'll find out there? She smiled grimly. I don't know. But whatever it is, we'll face it together. Humanity has always found a way to survive. And this time, we won't be alone. The Dauntless sped toward the unknown, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. The Eclipse had altered the course of history, but the story was far from over. And somewhere, in the depths of space, the signal reached its destination.